Jessica Marie Lunsford was born on the 6th of October 1995 in Gastonia, North Carolina. She loved school and was a well-mannered student who all staff and fellow pupils liked. She loved singing songs and spending quality time with her father, who would often take her out for rides on his motorcycle, one of her favourite things to do. Her family didn't have much money, and Jessica lived with her father, his parents, and their dog Corky in a trailer home in Homosassa, Florida. Jessica was a daddy's girl, and one of her favourite possessions was a stuffed dolphin toy that her father gave her. She took it everywhere and wouldn't sleep without it by her side. Jessica didn't have much contact with her mother Angie, who had split up with her father Mark and moved away when Jessica was just 1 year old. Angie had also gotten married and had another child, so Jessica's father and her grandparents meant the world to her. And this love was reciprocated. She was the love of all of their lives. She brought much joy, and they loved having her with them. Jessica often attended church with her father every Sunday. She never complained about having to get up early. In fact, she was always dressed and ready to go even before her dad. She was only 9 years old, but Jessica had dreams of becoming a singer or a fashion designer. She was creative and ambitious and had the world at her feet. Sadly, this would all change. On the 24th of February 2005, Jessica's father was up early to get ready for work. Whilst he was getting dressed, he heard Jessica's alarm that had been going off for quite some time, and she wasn't turning it off. He entered Jessica's bedroom to get her up for school. He didn't want her to be late. That was when he noticed that her clothes were still on the chair, all folded up, but Jessica was nowhere to be seen. Understandably, he was in a panic, wondering where his daughter was. He searched his home frantically, but Jessica was nowhere inside the home, so the authorities were alerted. Straight away, the police, the neighbours, as well as volunteers were out searching for Jessica, but couldn't find any trace of her anywhere. Nothing appeared to be missing from her bedroom, other than her pink nightgown and white shorts that she went to sleep in the night beforehand, and her favourite toy, her stuffed dolphin that never left her side. She had last been seen around 10 p.m. the night before when her grandparents had put her to bed. Mark had been at his girlfriend's house and had come home the next morning at around 6 a.m. to get ready for work. It was then that he discovered his daughter to be missing. Immediately, when the police arrived, they determined that the front door was unlocked. Jessica's family had a habit of leaving the door to their trailer unlocked. This was a very common thing to do in the area where they lived. Everybody in their small community knew everyone else and looked out for one another, or so it seemed. A nationwide missing children's alert was issued, and the police carried out extensive searches for Jessica. Unfortunately, an Amber Alert was not issued because it required law enforcement to describe what vehicle may have been used in an abduction, or provide some evidence of danger. Bloodhounds were called in the hopes that they would pick up a scent. Jessica's neighbour, Alvin Harris, even brought along his own bloodhound, Buford, to aid in the search. The search also included volunteers and officers on horseback, while a police helicopter could be heard buzzing from above all throughout the day. A dive team was assembled to search all nearby bodies of water. The search initially focused on the densely wooded area surrounding the family home. It turned up no clues as to where Jessica could have gone. The Citrus County Sheriff expressed great concern that this was possibly an abduction case, stating, "I have some grave concerns about the welfare of this child. We're working on something that's a step up from a missing person." Nobody believed that Jessica had gone missing voluntarily, or of her own accord. This was not like Jessica. She didn't act up, she didn't sneak out in the middle of the night, and it wasn't in her character. She was also scared of the dark and slept with a flashlight. Authorities also announced that they didn't suspect that either of her parents or her grandparents were responsible. Mark made appeals begging for the safe return of his daughter, saying, "If there's anything that anybody knows, there are a lot of numbers you can call. Help me find my daughter and bring her home." Sadly, the search would go on for over a month. In early March, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement listed 208 sex offenders and predators in Citrus County, with more than 50 in the zip code surrounding Jessica's home. As is protocol in all missing children's cases, sex offenders in the area were checked out by investigators. On the 15th of March, they disclosed that these routine checks had led them to a person of interest who was acquainted with Jessica. This person of interest, police announced, had been gone from Citrus County for around 2 weeks, and that if he didn't come back for an interview within 48 hours, his identity would be publicly released. When the person of interest did not come forward for questioning and could not be located, police released his name to the public: 46-year-old John Evander Couey. He lived 2 miles north of Jessica's home and often stayed with his half-sister Dorothy Dixon, who lived just 60 yards away, within eyeshot of the home where Jessica lived. He was apprehended in Georgia on the 17th of March. Couey was a career criminal who'd been arrested 24 times in a 30-year period. His crimes ranged from burglary, carrying a concealed weapon, disorderly intoxication, and driving under the influence, to indecent exposure, disorderly conduct, fraud, insufficient funds, and larceny. He had spent time in prison and had his driver's license suspended for 99 years, but as his drug addiction to crack cocaine became more extreme, his crimes escalated into sexually assaulting 2 young children. Under the police interview, the Lunsford's nightmares would become reality. Couey wasted no time admitting to his part. In a 2-hour confession interview, he said that at around 3 a.m, just a few hours before her father had arrived home, he had snuck through the open door of the Lunsford's home. He crept into Jessica's bedroom and woke her up, telling her, "Don't tell her nothing." He then took her outside and across the way to his half-sister's mobile home, taking her up to his bedroom on a ladder, where he kept Jessica alive for the weekend, sexually assaulting her over and over again. In a cruel twist of fate, investigators had come to the mobile home during an initial door-to-door search whilst Jessica was still alive. For some reason, they came to my house but they didn't come in and search. But I wish they would have, because they would have found her, but they didn't, Couey said. In addition to the sexual assaults, Couey kept Jessica hidden in a closet and mentally tortured her by letting her look out of the window at a police car that was searching for her. Couey told investigators that Jessica had never attempted to escape. She sat quietly in the closet, playing with Couey's cat and singing quietly to herself. When Couey was done with Jessica, he told her to climb into a garbage bag and that he would take her home. He told her that she'd needed to be in the bag so nobody saw him dropping her home. Believing her captor, she did what he said. Instead, Couey took Jessica to a pre-dug grave and buried her alive. He would later attempt to justify his actions by saying that Jessica didn't even try to fight back. When Jessica was unearthed, she was tightly clutching her stuffed dolphin. She had managed to rip 2 small holes in the garbage bag, but her attempt to escape was unsuccessful. Prosecutors in Couey's capital murder trial introduced the 2 black plastic garbage bags into evidence. Jessica's right index and middle fingers were poking out of the bags, which were knotted at her feet and her head. There in the dark, alone with the dolphin, she suffocated, said Assistant State Attorney Rick Ridgway during Couey's trial. By the time Couey spoke to investigators, his sister Dorothy had already granted authorities permission to search the single-wide trailer where she and Couey lived with her boyfriend, daughter, and her daughter's husband. In the search, investigators seized several items of evidence from Cooey's room and revealed trace evidence that linked Jessica to the middle bedroom of the trailer. The items proved invaluable to the prosecution's case against Cooey, especially after a judge suppressed Cooey's confession, ruling that police had violated his Miranda rights. The evidence against Cooey was damning. Aside from his confession, investigators found a bloodstain containing Jessica's DNA on his bed. They also found Cooey's DNA in semen, which was mixed with the bloodstain. In the closet where he'd kept Jessica, a pizza box containing Jessica's fingerprints were found. Her fingerprints were also found on a glass table in Cooey's bedroom. The jury also saw the stereo speaker wire, which was used to bind Jessica's wrists. A fibre analysis testified that the ligatures matched wires that ran from inside Cooey's room to make a makeshift antenna on his roof. Mark Lunsford addressed John Cooey in court, stating,
"I hope you hear her cries as you try to sleep at night. I hope you see the tears run down her face when she asked you to go home. I hope you spend the rest of your life in fear of death. You will never hurt another child again."
Mark went on to tell the court stories about his little girl. "I can remember when she was around 1 year old, and she would give me kisses and hugs and steal the raisins from my cereal. From bumps to bruises, from band-aids to bicycles, she was a tomboy with her daddy, and a very nice little lady for her grandmother," he said. Cooey responded by saying, "I'm a sick person. I don't even know why I did it to her. I just snapped and did it. I don't know why. I'm a sick man." Cooey also admitted to having sexual contact with his young female nieces, incidents that had never been reported to authorities. "I don't want to go to prison, but I deserve it. Deserve to just die," Cooey said. In his alleged confession, Cooey was asked what he would say if he could speak to Jessica. He responded, "I'm so sorry. I wish you were alive and you could walk to your parents." Despite John's attorneys trying to convince the jury that he was mentally incompetent, Cooey was found guilty and sentenced to death. He died in prison of natural causes in 2009. John Cooey's half-sister, Dorothy Dixon, was later arrested and appeared in a mugshot released by the Citrus County Sheriff's Office on March the 19th, 2005. Dixon and 2 others living inside the home where the confessed killer had stayed were charged with obstructing police for failing to notify authorities when he allegedly told them that he had committed a crime. Following Jessica's brutal murder, her family campaigned for states to pass Jessica's Law. This law mandates a minimum sentence of 25 years and a maximum of life in prison for first-time child sex offenders. Since Jessica's Law was passed in Florida, other states have introduced their own forms of Jessica's Law. As if this case was not sad enough, Mark Lunsford was diagnosed with lymphoma a few years after the murder of his daughter. Chemotherapy used to treat his lymphoma stole his trademark long hair and goatee, but it never stole his spirit. Mark's fight is fueled by his love for his daughter, who always told him that nothing would ever come between them. He works constantly on behalf of children and has become a nationally recognised spokesman for tougher, smarter laws regarding child predators and offenders.